Let's get down to brass tacks.
Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here tonight, special event for me personally as a YouTuber, continuing our series of interviews with so many amazing content creators. And tonight is no different. I have with me tonight, we have Elliot from Movie Files. Man, thank you so much. Like I said before we started this, thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm so curious to hear about your story. So thanks for being here, man.
Well, I'm excited to be here. And as we were talking backstage, I didn't even notice you have amazing posters behind you. Some of my favorite movies there, man. So this is going to be a fun conversation, man, because you were rocking my Halloween shirt. I mean, this is gonna be fun, man.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for the folks out there who may not know your content, what started you off with your movie fandom? What was the beginning of that?
Yeah, well, my journey has taken a couple different paths. Well, one of which I'm an only child, so to occupy myself, I would watch tons of movies, tons of TV shows, Power Rangers, Pokemon. I've watched horror movies way too young at points, but no, I would always find ways to entertain myself, and that was besides getting into sports. And as we talked about, I was in martial arts for a small part of my life, but was big into sports. But once I got done with those activities, I would come home and watch, like I said, movies and shows and play my games. So I've always been someone that's been a fan of storytelling, but as I got older, took a film class in high school that translated to me getting my degree in college for film and video. And the idea, I never knew exactly, because when you get your degree in film and video or production, you put your hands in every category. I've directed a film, edited a film, sound design, sound mixing, everything you think of. But I never really found my niche. It was just like, I love it all. So as the adulthood comes up, when I don't know exactly what I want to do, you got to still pay the bills. So I would always have like doing film things and like as a hobby, but never into like a full-time opportunity or full-time gig. So that's kind of where the YouTube comes in. When I was in college, I would do like literally a variety of like CD album reviews, TV reviews, video game reviews, movie, and it was just like a montage of stuff. But it was never really consistent. It was just, again, just a hobby. When I got off of work, whatnot. But then it was, I want to say 2017. My girlfriend at the time was someone that loved going to movies with me, loved watching shows with me, but it was overwhelming because it's a whole nother level when you're a super nerd into the fandom and you have someone, it's just like a general audience is just like, yeah, it's fun to go to the movies, but can we do something else different? So she kind of came up with the idea of like, hey, because that channel I was referring to earlier, I kind of never, like for 3 or 4 years, I just kind of left it. It was just nothing was going there, so I don't want to say retired, but I just didn't do YouTube anymore. I was like, hey, why don't you start your YouTube channel up again? So I started a whole new channel, and like I said, that was like 2017. I remember my first review was for It Chapter 1. And from there, I've haven't looked back from 2017 to where we are now, 7 years later, still covering movies and shows. And luckily, as we'll probably talk about, that's open opportunities to, become a film critic. I'm a part of a film critic association here where I live. Get the opportunity to talk about movies and shows on my local news station out here in St. Louis. And of course, met some wonderful people in the process as well. So yeah, it's kind of the short end of the origin story there.
Wow, that's pretty awesome, man. I mean, I think that for a lot of people that I've talked to, as well as myself, you hear some similar threads, as far as being young, and sometimes it occupied our time as far as watching movies, watching TV, and especially if people, when they talk about horror, it's like, oh yeah, I watched some stuff I probably shouldn't have seen at a certain age, and so that's always pretty fun to hear. Now, did you have any movies in particular that were some of your favorites when you were younger?
All-time favorite, still one of my favorites today, is definitely like Jurassic Park. Like that film, to me, being a 90s kid, just opened up the realm of just like possibilities of like, for the longest, I thought those were real dinosaurs. But no, right. It was just, being amazed by, Steven's work and just the production value and just having all, like, it's a genre bending film to me, right? It's suspense, it's sci-fi, it's horror, it's adventure, a little bit of comedy. So that was, like I said, still to date one of my all-time favorites, and definitely was a film that just opened up my imagination. And from there, would obviously check out other Stevens works, E.T.'s the World and things of that nature. So, but I would say Jurassic Park was the one that just really just caught my eye, just being in awe of what movies can do and how they can make you feel.
Yeah, man. I mean, I remember the first time I saw it, and just it was just so majestic, you know, and just so surreal. It's like I know I'm watching a movie, but like you said, it's like the dinosaurs, they look real, and the way that the actors, you know, the cast was just pretty much flawless in their chemistry, and everything just kind of came together. John Williams' score, you know, everything just really, you know, and even
it's a quintessential movie magic is what they call it. It has all the movie magic.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You know, now I know, especially with you and just all the different things that you enjoy, I know this. I know we're going to go into some rabbit trails, and that's actually what I'm excited about. But parking on Jurassic Park for a moment, what are your thoughts about the more recent trilogy, and also the idea that they're going to be going with the new film?
The new trilogy was it was a disappointment. I'll be honest. The first one to me was just kind of the Star Wars of you know, the Force Awakens, kind of rehashing things that we saw from A New Hope, which you know, the nostalgia aspect really worked for me in that first film. But then it kind of derailed into, which I do like, J.A. Bayona, but I believe it was Fallen Kingdom was the next one. Which if they would have just captured like the first 10 minutes of that film, and I understand he was trying to do like a horror film, like locked into a house with Jurassic Park, but it's like it just didn't really work for me. And that third one, I think we can all agree, Domain, I think was the last one, was atrocious. So good way to kick off the franchise, kind of mid on the middle one. The last one just a disappointment. So, but the new one, Gareth Edwards, I'm a fan of his, from his first, you know, film Monster to Rogue One, and our most recent film Creator. I just think he's such an innovative director, and he's one of those directors that makes the best out of what he has. Like, he comes from those roots of horror, as we'll talk about, where it's like you don't have the biggest budget, but so your imagination really has to thrive. And I think he does a good job of just creating these worlds. So I'm excited for him. I know there's been, obviously, the original writer of the first Jurassic Park is coming back, which he's a legendary writer. So I'm excited. I'm expecting a much better written film than the previous trilogy. And I guess the rumor is now it's going to be going back to its roots in a sense, where it's going to be kind of more, even though I know the first one was on an island and obviously kind of a blockbuster feel to it, but this is supposed to, again, go back to Gareth Edwards, scaling it down, more of a personal story, maybe getting back to the horror roots a little bit. So I'm intrigued, and I've saw some of the names, Scarlett Johansson, I think I read the other day, Coleman Domingo, and a couple other people that I really enjoy. So on paper so far, it sounds exciting. But it does put a little fear in me of some of the stuff that they were like looking for a director at first, to just have a director just to shoot it, because they already had the script already in mind. So they just want someone to kind of plug and play, which kind of makes me nervous. And the idea that it's coming out next year. So that's and they haven't even started filming yet. So that's a pretty quick turnaround. So again, it kind of points towards a smaller film, but then it sounds like it's kind of rushed, and it might be one of those, you know, on a conveyor belt type of movies where it's just like everything's already made, we just need someone just to put it out there versus like actually having passion behind it. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're like, hey, just direct it, get it out there, get it out, do what we say. We don't care, just do it.
Because that means, even though I don't like the previous ones, they were profitable. Each one made less than the original, or not the original, but the first one, as far as Jurassic World in 2015. But they still made $1 billion. So they're successful. But I just want a great movie. So we'll see.
I do too, and it's actually too bad, because I actually enjoyed Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, you know, in those roles. I think they had some really good chemistry, especially in that first one. I mean, there was just some really nice moments that kind of, at least for me, harkened back to the original movies a little bit. But I agree, man. They kind of went off the rails, and I'm like, what are you guys doing here, man? I mean, like, you know, it just became something totally different. But anyways, but yeah, Jurassic Park is fantastic, and that's a great movie to kind of have as one of your favorites, in my opinion. Now, how about the different genres that you were into growing up? Did you have any favorites that stood out, or one over the other, or did you just kind of like everything, whether it's action, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, or whatever?
Definitely love it all, but I would say, going back to the only child thing and running with your imagination, science fiction was right up my alley. So again, going back to the idea of Jurassic Park and seeing the science element and the dinosaurs, obviously, but sci-fi and as I'll talk about later, horror Those are the two genres to this date are my favorite. Whenever I hear an original science fiction film or original horror film, it just gets me so excited. So the imagination is where the science fiction runs, but then the idea, I don't know where it stems from, but I love the thrills of being scared. In horror films, being in the 90s, I kind of grew up in that prime era of slasher films, your Screams, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legends, so on and so forth. Of course, carrying over from the 80s with Jason and Freddy, and also, Pinhead and your Child's Play. So I don't know, I just love horror, man. So those are the two, but as that still is said, I love action movies. I love a good comedy, even though we don't get so many good comedies, in my opinion, nowadays.
Right.
It's like a dying genre, unfortunately. But yeah, man, I love it all.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I'm definitely in that same boat. And not that I was thinking we were going to park on comedies a lot, but you actually said something that I've said a lot here on the channel in this community. It's like, it just seems like we don't have those really special comedies nowadays like we did back then. And of course, there's a voice in the back of my mind saying, man, come on, you just sound like an old man. You talk about back in my
true,
day.
Though. It's 100%
but it feels true.
Yeah.
It feels true, man, because, growing up and I grew up in the 80s, 90s. So, I was around things like, National Lampoons and Young Frankenstein and Clue and Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy's stuff that he did. Just so many great comedies. And it was people, or actors, I should say, comedians, who had such great talent that they didn't necessarily have to. It just seems like nowadays with comedies, like there has to be kind of like a shtick.
Mind if I touch your wiener?
What?
Your dog.
Oh. You have someone that's being super perverted, and that's kind of their thing, is that they're talking dirty and they're being super dirty, but it's not necessarily their thing per se. It's almost like a gimmick, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, 100%.
Yeah, so it is kind of a dying it's kind of like a dying genre, which is too bad.
It is. And I mean, as you just mentioned with those films in the 80s and 90s, I mean, with the 90s of it all, Adam Sandler's, Chris Tucker's, I mean, Dave Chappelle's, they were great comedians that, as you just mentioned, translate to the big screen. But I don't follow the comedic circle as well as I used to growing up, so I don't really even know like who's the it guy or the it girl that can kind of translate from being funny on stage and translate that to film, because as we know that the times are much different. Obviously, a lot of those films in the 80s and 90s probably wouldn't get made today with kind of the sensitivity of certain styles of comedy. So, I mean, there's so many different factors. And even the comedies that are out now, they just go straight to streaming, Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever the case may be, instead for, I can't even think of the last big comedy that was pushed out there. Even going to the 2000s when you had the Paul Rudd's, Seth Rogen's, Judd Apatow, Hangover, Superbad's one of my favorite comedies. So I don't even know where the genre is. And I think one of the things too is the comedy finds itself in other genres. Like superhero movies have tons of comedy now. Horror comedy, most recently with Annabelle.
What the fuck is that thing? We kidnapped a fucking vampire. A ballerina vampire.
So I think comedy's trying to find its way back by finding itself in the subgenres of certain things, but I just want a good straight up comedy. I know I read last couple weeks ago that they're trying to bring back Scary Movie or revise it. So we'll see. If I don't even know if parody comedies can work nowadays. So we'll see. Right. I'm hopeful those. I love a good comedy.
Yeah, me too. And it's been a long time. It really has to have something, at least on my radar, that was like, wow, that was just great. I love it. Whereas with the other genres, and I'm a big fan, very similar to you. Horror is my favorite, but action is kind of right there with it, and also sci-fi. The three is like, but I can think of fantastic films from those genres that have come out in the last couple years, and then I'd be like, you got to watch Dune, or you got to watch this or that, so we'll see what happens with comedy. But speaking of that, and obviously my audience is huge into horror. So if we start to go into horror, and man, you hit it right on the nail. I know a few people watching this will be like, oh yes, he talked about the 90s, he talked about, you know, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When you look at horror back then, you know, back in the 90s or even in the 80s or whatever, what comes to your mind? What are some things that come to your mind? Is it the stories? Is it the practical effects? Is it the way that it made you feel when you were younger?
I think for me, and I still watch a lot of those 90 films, you know, on rotation, and not just Halloween. Like horror for me is 365 all year round. But I think it was just, I don't say lightning in a bottle, but it just did a good job of, number one, building kind of these the stars of its time, right? You think of going back to the Screams of the world, like Neve Campbell, where's she come from, to kind of build off of that, or Jennifer Love Hewitt, or what have you. So I did a good job, like picking these actors who were just coming up or new to the scene, and really kind of playing to sensibilities of making you care for these actors, likable actors in these roles. But also, I think coming off of from like the 80s, practicality was so huge for those films back then, as far as just really bringing out the productional value and not relying on visual. Oh, we'll fix it in post, and kind of taking you out of the moment with some of these horrendous CGI moments in some of these horror films in recent memory. But I love the practicality of the 90s, and I love that they were distinct, and they had style, and they had flair to it, on top of having some good substance. But like sometimes with modern day horror, you can't really even tell who the director is. It just feels like, oh, this is just, who's behind this? Like, it just feels like it's this manufactured and doesn't have too many creative juices behind. I think of, again, you know, classic Wes Cravens, or you know, I can't think of right now, but just thinking of Wes Craven style. Like, you knew you were watching a Wes Craven film with this horror sensibilities and this take. Sam Raimi's of the world. And nowadays, like, I think we're in a good spot of horror. It was some darker moments in the mid 2000s and early 2000s, but I like the batch of horror directors and creatives: Jordan Peele's, Ari Aster's, Robert Eggers, James Wan, Lee Winnell, Jennifer Kent. So like, we have this bunch of directors that are really carrying the genre, that are kind of reminding me of those things that I love from the 90s.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. You just named some of my favorites in the genre. I think for me, because we also here we talk about the decades and the different, like, the phases of horror, and I've always felt that, especially like James Wan, you know, once James Wan kind of came on board, you know, and he did Insidious, and then he did The Conjuring. I remember the first time I saw those, man, I was like, whoa. You know, it was weird in a good way, because it was kind of bringing me back to the old school stuff. But
to me, I think of James Wan, he's the modern day Sam Raimi. That's my Sam Raimi comparison. I think James Wan has a lot of Sam Raimi of him.
I totally agree with that. That is definitely on point, you know. And once he started crafting these films, and it also seemed like they were given a little bit more respect, you know, from outside of the horror community, and they also were bankable. You know, they made pretty good money, and it was kind of like, and now we have these actors that were, you know, they were of good craft. You know, you've got your Vera Farmigas, and Patrick Wilson, and you got Barbara Hershey, you know, from the old days coming in, and of course the great Lynn Shay, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And I just thought to myself, this is kind of like a renaissance of sorts.
I agree.
And it really has continued to today, because like you said, Ari Aster, I mean, Hereditary. I mean, bro, when I saw that movie the first time,
it messed me. Like, I can honestly say that was 2018. That was the last. There's been some great horror films in the last decade or so, but that film stands out to me. Hereditary is one of my favorites in the past decade. I shouldn't say I love Hereditary, but it's an incredible movie.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that just stood out for me. I remember watching it one night. I didn't really have any particular expectations. I did see the trailer, but the trailer didn't give away anything of what you were about to see, which I think was fantastic. You know, we might jump into that too, because I think sometimes the marketing of these movies is so important, as far as don't give away too much, but you do want to draw people in, so that
I'm looking at you,
Watch it.
Abigail.
Yes. Oh my God. Are you? All right. Hold on. So, all right, we'll do the Hereditary. Then we gotta get to Abigail, which was on my list. So, I'm watching Hereditary, and it's at night.
Yeah.
And I'm just excited to be watching a horror movie. And let me just say, Toni Collette. I mean, what a performance! And the son is shell shocked, goes into his bedroom, and there's no words, no nothing. You're just stuck in that emotional moment. And Toni Collette goes downstairs to the car, and you hear that wail. I talk about this so much, but it's fun to talk about. But that wail that she lets out, and just the grief and the emotion, it still kind of gets me as far as she's just so convincing and feels so real. But that's what that movie does for me. It's just so well done, and it's really, really good. But Abigail, man, you're so right. I just saw it the other day. I haven't even put out my video and my thoughts on it. Hopefully I'll do that soon. But you're right, that trailer. Everything. I mean, I enjoyed the movie, but I wish, and it's a tough call because I know that they got to market it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they just say, hey, this movie's about Abigail and she's just a ballerina, and we got these fantastic actors as part of the cast, I don't think that they would have been able to draw people in. But the fact that the trailer gave away what the movie was about, it's like, I would have loved to have gotten that as a surprise.
It was like, we talked about comedy earlier. It was like knowing the punchline of the joke, and that was that she was a killer ballerina. And I totally agree with you. It's hard to market that movie. I still think there could have been creative ways. I need to go back because it reminded me so much of like just kind of the idea of like From Dusk Till Dawn, how George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, heist movie, and it becomes a vampire movie. Like, I don't remember how they marketed that movie. If they showed the audience that it is a vampire movie, I can't remember. I have to look at the trailer, but I think there could have been a way of kind of tiptoeing around the idea that they kidnapped this girl. They don't know who her father is, but then play to the idea that there's a vampire on the loose in the house, and not really showing you who the actual vampire is. Is it one of the, is it Melissa Barrera? Is it one of the, Jen Stevens? Is it the little girl? I think they could have played up on that a little bit more, and still sold that it is a vampire film, but you're trying to figure out who it is. But when I saw the film, and I don't want to spoil anything, but like in the trailer, they show you certain characters who change. I'll just say that's literally in the trailer. And it's just so many moments where it's just like, there's a couple surprises here and there, but even putting the surprises, I enjoyed Abigail for what it was worth, but I was just anticipating a little bit more from it because I'm a fan of Radio Silence. I'm a fan of the cast. I love a good vampire film. And again, there's fun to be had. And I don't know if we want to have this conversation about like comedy, horror comedy. I feel like it leaned more into the horror, or leaned more into the comedy, but I was wanting more of the horror. That was kind of sidelined. There were like off-screen kills and tons of blood and gore, but I don't know. It's a tough call to kind of make a good comedy and a good horror combined into one. So again, I know a lot of people loving it, but I thought it was just okay. And again, the whole idea of like the whole movie was pretty much laid out in the trailer was a bit disappointing, which gives me more reason to stay away from as many trailers as possible. I try to watch stuff I'm excited for, but I try to go into a lot of other movies like as blind as possible, and I wish I would have went in blind on that one, but it is what it is.
Man, I absolutely agree. And I think that, like you said, some off-screen stuff, I was hoping to have that be shown. I mean, they did have some twists and turns, in that third act that were it was fun and it was cool to see, but I don't think that it was strong enough to outweigh the fact that we knew what we were getting into going into the movie. Because when I saw it, and I went with my lovely Coriander, and we have two kids, two young ones, and we had all seen the trailer. So in the beginning, you're watching it, and at least for me, and it's maybe part of my mind also as a YouTuber, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, so when is she gonna start attacking them? And that worked against me as far as enjoyment, because now I'm just anticipating her becoming a vampire and starting this thing off. And what they're trying to do in the movie is get us invested in the characters and the setup, so I really think that was a poor choice. Whereas like with Ready or Not,
it's a great movie.
And I think the marketing was great because you knew that they were you knew that they were playing a game. Obviously, the name of the movie gives that away, but you didn't know all the little. There was
the
tons
levels
of little
and
things,
the rituals and all the stuff.
Yes.
I could agree with you more, man. And to Abigail, to that point of like, I said this in my review. The first 40 minutes is, as you said, character development, setting the situation. But to me, it was like I was watching the characters 10 steps behind me as an audience, because I know, because they're trying to make it a mystery, like these people are being picked off, what's in that, like we know it's a killer ballerina in the house, but we're literally and I don't look at my phone while watching the movies, but I always look at my phone to see like when the first kill happens, and it was 40 minutes into the film until we get the first kill. And again, it was fun to be had because those characters were fun, but it's like I felt like I was waiting for the characters in the story to catch up to the hook, which again is just killer vampire on the loose, or lose people. So again, the marketing can be tough, and again, I could see where their hands were kind of tied on that, but I think there could have been more creative ways to sell that film and not give away all the big punches and surprises.
Absolutely agree with that, no doubt about that. And Radio Silence, they're talented, and they've got they've got a style that they're crafting in their movies, which I'm cool with. But I do agree, it'd be nice to have that meter kind of move a little bit more to the horror. The comedy, in my opinion, the comedy's gonna be there, through the characters, and they've been working. They work with fantastic actors. I love Melissa Barrera, Samara Weaving, Kevin Durand was hilarious.
He was good.
Catherine Newton, all these fantastic actors, and I just think that they're skilled enough to allow the comedy and the fun to evolve, and I just think we should lean a little bit more into the horror. But speaking of Radio Silence, which will kind of dovetail back to Scream a little bit, now that we have finally kind of cleared the rubble on Scream 7, and the unfortunate, in my opinion, the unfortunate exiting of Melissa Barrera and Christopher Landon. And now we have Neve Campbell coming in to save the day.
Scream Queen herself is back.
Oh man, I'm happy. I'm happy she's coming back. I just hope, and I'm cautiously optimistic, but I just hope that the story is good. Because Sidney Prescott means so much for this franchise and for horror, and to bring her back, which I know they wanted to do that even before the thing with Melissa and Jenna. So I know they wanted to bring her back anyways, but you get the sense that now they're going to kind of, obviously the story is going to be much more centered on her, because you're not going to have Sam Carpenter into it. So what are your overall thoughts on that situation, Scream 7 in general, and what you're hoping it will be?
Man, big fan. So behind Halloween, Scream is like my second favorite horror franchise of all time. So I'm a big fan. Really enjoyed the Radio Silence take on 5 and 6, and was excited to see Sam's arc and see how it all played out. Right. But in most recent weeks or so with the Abigail press tour, I think she had even alluded, or Melissa said, like she was only contracted for 2 films, even though she knew they weren't going to do it 3, but initially the arc was going to be 1 and 2. So I guess there is a little bit of like closure on that end. Like it was never, I guess, guaranteed that it was going to be like another story to be told, but we can all see the right and like the whole angle with them. Who's the mom? The importance of the mom. Where is she the whole time? But neither here nor there. Very sad to see her go. And Christopher Landon, when they brought him on, I was I liked his first big film that he did, the time travel repeat, Happy Death Day. Didn't like the second one. And what was it? Did he do that body swapping movie with Vince Vaughn? Was that
Freaky?
Freaky with Catherine? Was that his film?
Catherine Newton.
I did like.
Yes.
I think if he did that one, I did enjoy that, because that to me had a much better mixture. We talked about horror comedy. That played a lot better to me than some of the recent horror comedies. So I was hit or miss on him as a director. So I wasn't too sad to see him go. But this new rendition with bringing Neve back, Courtney Cox is apparently coming back, and the whole angle of like her family being involved. I'm just like, I'm curious to see what they do, because initially you would think that the Ghostface is going to be hunting her family for whatever reason. We'll find out why, and her husband. So I'm curious. I know the director is Kevin Williamson, who it still blows my mind that he's not writing and directing. That seems like such a weird thing. I'm sure he's going to have his hands, like he's going to have his suggestions and kind of, things that he wants to, with him being the director, he can make changes on the day. But I just would have thought it'd been like more exciting for him to be the director and writer. But nonetheless, we'll see. It's a good bounce back, because I know if this was another franchise that had all the behind the scenes issues, I don't even know if they've been able to recover and bring back the star of the original franchise. So I guess it's a happy accident that kind of happened. So we'll see, man. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just kind of cautiously optimistic. I'm excited. I absolutely love Neve Campbell so much.
Same.
She's on my bucket list. If I ever can meet her at a convention, I'll be complete. I almost got to meet her 2 years ago in New Jersey.
Yeah,
and she had a schedule conflict, and I was just so heartbroken. I did meet Matthew Lillard and David Arquette,
nice,
and Jamie Kennedy, so that was awesome. And they're great guys. But I missed Neve. I was like, oh man.
Sidney Prescott, page 220.
Almost complete. I mean, you brought up Matthew. Just a quick question for you, and bringing it back to her being in the forefront. Does the fan theory that seems to divide fans of Stu being alive, is that a plot that we can see this time around?
Yeah, man.
Bringing Stu back and definitively answering that question.
Well, it's funny that you're throwing this out, because I was going to throw it out to you, because I know, a lot of viewers here in our community here, they're big about that. One of my great friends, Steven from Craven Something Scary, who's also an amazing content creator, he's really big about Stu, and we talk about the theories and stuff quite a bit. My viewpoint on it is this. Everything points to him coming back, in my opinion. They've laid so many breadcrumbs in 5 and 6. In 5, when you had that scene where Richie, is looking on his phone, they had the little thing talking about, Kirby Reed, is she alive? And Stu Macher, the real Stu Macher, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, they brought back Kirby in Scream 6. So it's kind of like, oh man, it's like, and the fact that now we're bringing Neve back, and putting her in the forefront, to me, and again, it's all about execution, the way they write this. You could do it without him for sure, but to me, it seems as though having him coming back and having that conflict, having him maybe behind the scenes running this Ghostface cult, because we saw the cult aspect in the beginning of Scream 6
or 6
with Tony Revolori's character, him and Greg,
his boyfriend.
There's literally Ghostface killer cults. So having Stu, because that was the original idea for Scream 3.
3, right? Yeah, he was like the mastermind in prison doing stuff behind the scenes. Yeah,
that's right. And that's what Wes was going to do.
So
it's kind of like, it's on the table now. I know there are tons of people that hate the idea and they think it's stupid and this and that, and that's perfectly fine. But I just feel as though at this point in the series where you're bringing back Neve, put it this way, is about the best opportunity to do it than what they've had, forever, really, So I'd be open for it, because I'm a fan of Matthew, and I would love to see them do it and see how it goes.
And he tapped into that horror psycho side, and was it Friday?
Five Nights at
Freddy's. Yeah. I liked it, that switch in the character there. So yeah, the door is definitely open, and I could even, again, talking to like the whole legacy of it all and Sidney's kids being involved, I can even see them having like the whole. I know it would be very similar to Scream 5, but like Stu had a kid that he didn't know about, and that kid now is 16, 7, or probably older than that now, 20 something years old. And now they want revenge. They will, you take my dad, I take your kid. So we'll see what's out there.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It definitely is possible, but I'm curious, and that's the fun of it too, because we talk about horror movies quite a bit, and theories and ideas and positives and negatives. And that's the fun of Scream in general, is that there's that mystery aspect in so many characters and paths that they could take. But I'd be remiss, and you said it, and I was wondering, man. So you said Halloween is number one.
Yep.
And Halloween is it's a treasure to me. It's growing up at the time I did, the big three, Jason, Freddy, Michael. I mean, I literally grew up with them, and I just love those movies. So just for those who probably are interested, with the recent David Gordon Green trilogy for Halloween, what were your overall thoughts on it, and how do you see the franchise? I mean, I know they're going to be doing the TV series supposedly, but what do you see for the franchise going forward, man? Because we're only 4 years away from the 50th anniversary of the franchise. Wow,
that is insane. The new trilogy, and I have I've been pretty vocal on it when I've reviewed the last two. Not a fan of kills and ends. Very disappointed. But I'm still a big fan. You know, obviously, if you're a fan of the franchise, and I'm a big fan, and I can even admit that the franchise isn't as consistent as I would have liked it to be. Like I would even say Scream probably has a more consistent batting ratio of like good films versus terrible films, and Halloween has its share of fair of terrible films. But wasn't a fan of the most recent trilogy. Really liked 2018. I like the first half of Kills with the flashback sequence is really well done. Paranoia of the Shape kind of terrorizing the community. But then once we got to that hospital scene and, you know, Evil Dies Tonight onward was just, what is going on? Completely different movie for me. And then I don't even want to get started on ends. I am not a Corey fan at all. I don't like how he just completely embarrassed and bullied the Shape in many points of the I just... And then Laurie, and it should have just been a Laurie Michael movie. They dropped the ball on the, I can't even think of her daughter, her granddaughter, Allison storyline, and she just not a fan. David Gordon Green, not to derail the sideline, but his exorcism take, I think he needs to leave horror. I think he's done his time in horror, and needs to go back to comedies and raunchy comedies and kind of get back to that. But anyway, as far as the future goes, I'm not the biggest fan of the idea of a TV series. I know they're doing that with Jason now, with going back to him being a kid and dive into the, like, why are we doing this? This is the mystery of the Shape, the mystery of, you know, Freddy and Jason. We don't need to know all their backstory. So why are we filling in the blanks? That's sometimes the scariest part. Like, we don't need to know why they're killing people. It's just that's the scary part. They're just doing it because they are psychotic. But a Friday or a Halloween show does not sound good to me. I mean, of course, there's potential to be had because, of course, you have more time to spend with characters and exploring the lore and mythology. And you can even do like a Halloween 3 situation, Season of the Witch, and kind of play into different mythologies and different characters, different places, and bring them together. And, you know, who knows? But I don't know. I feel like if it's a TV show, we're gonna have to wait. What's the kill of the week? What's the cool kill that we? I don't know. It doesn't sound. I think certain characters need to stay in the big screen, and Michael's one of those characters to me. But it needs to find just good creative people that are familiar with the IP, that knows the character, that knows what John Carpenter did in that '78 version was. The simpler, the better. Like, you don't have to make things so convoluted. I know even the sequel with Laurie and Michael being siblings and all that stuff, but like, I think they just need to go back to the basics. No, I agree. The thing about '78 that's so amazing to this day, at least for me, is how lean it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just really gets into the heart of, okay, this guy escapes. These kids have no idea that they're in the heart of darkness, literally. And how is that going to play out? That's all it is. Why? I don't know, but it's freaking scary. Why did he kill his sister at 6 years old? I don't know, but he did it, and now he's continuing to do it. And I've always been, you know, in the communities, there's people that are the Halloween purists, you know, the Carpenter purists, and there are those who love the sequels, and there are those who love them all. I mean, I do love them all. I'm a franchise fan, but I do think less is more. And any time
you try to explain backstories, you always run into the opportunity for potholes, and that goes for Jason. It goes for Freddy. I mean, you look at Freddy's dead. I mean, holy crap, potholes all over the place.
Yeah.
Jason goes to hell. They're trying to change the mythology, and now he's got a sister, and the Necronomicon is in it, and a magical dagger that's like the Sword of Omens. Like, what is going on with my franchise here? You know?
You're goddamn right.
So
Yeah.
I rather not know. I'd rather, you know, just kind of have things happening. And I mean, you can give a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here and there, but I don't want things fully explained, because then it takes away the imagination and the magic, in my opinion. So yeah,
the white horse of you know, Rob Zombie whole trilogy.
Wow, man. You know, to this day, and every once in a while we'll do you know, watch alongs or watch parties of the films, and you know, people love it. I do too. But man, we crack on that movie so much. I mean, there's good stuff in it.
Some good It's brutal as hell. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great slasher film as far as the slasher elements and the kills and the gore, and Tyler Mane is a very imposing Michael Myers, but the white horse stuff and kind of just some of the Rob Zombie isms really started to overtake the Halloween mythology, and it was kind of like, you know, you should try to marry the two, in my opinion. So yeah, man, I could look, I'm telling you, I'm gonna jump off this trail, because I could go down this trail all night talking about
well, let me ask you, are you looking forward to the future of Halloween? Are you anticipating a good series potentially, if they stick with this whole TV approach?
Well, I'm hopeful. Man. I mean, you know, I'm always curious. I do agree with you. When I first heard that they were going to do the TV thing, I was like, oh no, don't do that. Don't dilute it too much. You know, I want to, you know, usually with Halloween, they would do a set of movies and then they take like a, you know, 8 to 10 year break, you know, after H2O, and then they did Resurrection, and then they took off, you know, a bunch of years before Rob Zombie came on. And after his second movie, they took off 9 years before 2018. And I think that's what we should do, is just, you know, we had ends. They tried to experiment. It didn't really work. Let's just take some time off. If you want to do something for the 50th anniversary in 2028, that's fine. But, you know, if you bring something onto the TV, like I said, I'm curious how they're even going to execute it, you know, because Michael is best when he's in the shadows, and you know, he's basic. I call him the greatest horror ninja of all time. That's what he needs to be. We can't, like you said, having a kill of the week, and you know, Michael just happens to kill someone every week. It's like it's really stretching that believability. But I'm curious, and I'm hoping it works out.
Yeah, well, and then the other big thing to tell me is, where does it land? Like, where are we on Paramount Plus, or are we on HBO? Like, I don't know who has the New Line. I think is the production. I think so. It'll be interesting to see where it lands. That'll be a big selling point for me. Where they're going to actually, if it stays with the TV route, where are they going to put it on TV? And I think I read somewhere they want to make TV and then it's going to build to a movie. I don't know. It's like it's a cinematic universe.
Yep, I've heard that too. It's like, bro, this is not Marvel. Okay, this is everyone's got to stop getting so hyped up trying to do what Marvel did. It's like that's in and of itself, and if anything, they're just doing what comic books had done decades before. You know what I mean? So there is proof in the pudding with that, and everybody wants to have these universes and all that. I know it's you know, strategy for a business is fine, but I just don't think it works with a lot of different IPs. So it is what it is, man. Now, as we start to wind down here a little bit, I wanted to, and this has been absolutely awesome, by the way. I'm just like, man, I'm just like, this is cool, because we've been covering so many cool things. But to kind of circle back to YouTube, and you know, we heard about your origin story and how you got into it as a YouTuber, and I know a lot of folks in the community that watch you know, my content, a lot of them are content creators as well. Do you have any advice for for YouTubers, if you were to, you know, let people know what are some things that you would suggest, or maybe like if you were starting a channel today, or if you were in your early stages of a channel today that you would do, are there any things that you want to pass on to other people?
Yeah, going back to the Halloween discussion about consistency, I think that's the biggest thing about YouTube. Is YouTube wants its users or creators to be on the platform, not just watching content but making content, and not just making content for the sake of making content, but making content. They're making things that you enjoy and have a passion about. Because I've been guilty, especially in the early days, of just covering stuff because I think other people would like to. But you brought up Marvel earlier, like this covering. Let me just watch this movie because I know it's gonna be a big algorithmic type of thing that the algorithm is gonna push it because it's being talked about in the search engine and whatnot. But being consistent, talking about things you love to enjoy and to talk about. And also the community is big too. We talked about a little off camera about just building a community and sticking to it and appreciating the community you have. I think building a community pretty early on, and not just within your own individual channel, but reaching out to other, content creators. And because it's look, I tell you one thing about YouTube. It has its ups and downs, and it's nothing like it as far as, and this goes for all content creators, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok, which we'll see if that's even a thing by the end of the year. But right. It's a tough thing that we do as far as putting ourselves in front of a camera, editing our reviews or whatever the product is, putting it out there, marketing it, and consistently doing that 3 to 4 to 5 times a day or a week, whatever the case may be. It's a tough gig, and it's not everyone can relate to it. So it's always good to have people that you can maybe bounce ideas off of and vent to and collaborate with, and just share those ups and downs with other people. So again, consistency, having fun, being passionate, and building a community on your own platform, but outside the platform, are definitely 3 pillars that I would say would make the experience pretty fun for those that are just starting, or even someone's been doing it for a while and looking for new ways to rekindle that fire that they might have had, years ago. So yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, because you definitely have to have bridges to other folks, and you might have to vent, you might have to get guidance, you might have something that you're curious about, and YouTube is so, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, what's behind that curtain, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And as much as and this is just my opinion, because I've only been at it for about 4 years, just a little over 4 years, so I know I'm still really very new at it, but it's curious because YouTube provides a lot of tools for content creators, and there's different resources, but just how the algorithm works and how certain things play out, there's so much mystery to it. If you craft a video and just all things being equal, and that it's it's a well done video, and you did well explaining whatever you want to explain, and you put that video out, it's almost like, well, it might do this or it might do that, and sometimes you find that it does something that you didn't even think about, whether it's good or bad, right? And it's so crazy, because if you do this for a hobby, then okay, that's fine. But I truly think most people, if you've done it for a certain amount of time, and if you do it to a certain level of consistency, it's more than a hobby. It's a passion for sure, or at least hopefully it is. But you're also hoping to make it something successful as a business, basically. And that's where so many question marks come into play. I remember, and we were talking about this backstage before we started, talking to someone like Cody Leach, who, he imparted some of the same things that you said, and how it's just, it's a grind. You got to be consistent. You got to, it's almost like you're in a boxing match, and you just got to be willing to keep taking the hits and just keep coming back, And you hope that over time, that you will get a foothold and start to walk up that mountain, which not everyone can do. I mean, it's tough.
It is tough. I mean, because another thing you don't want to do is just be afraid to experiment too. You might, as you talked about, the highs and lows of like you put so much energy in something and you don't get the results you were looking for. But don't let that discourage you of trying different things, experimenting different things, different styles of videos. They always say first impressions are huge. Thumbnails, experimenting with thumbnails are very important, because it's the hardest thing is to get the person to click on the video, let alone watch for a long period of time. So many different factors that goes into it. But I would never discourage someone from like, just experiment, just try things that work. And and that's one of the beauties of YouTube or any content creating. When you find anything that works and it's consistently working, it's such a good thing. But then don't be afraid to try something new, even when you find something that is successful. Because that's one thing about me. I never want to be boxed into like just doing, and there's some great content creators that just do Marvel stuff or do DC stuff. But then I think I would imagine, at least if I can speak for myself, I would imagine at a certain point when those things aren't, like the MCU hasn't been doing the best in the last few years, like do those content creators, like, do they have to like put on a thing like, we're gonna be okay, guys, we gotta wait till Deadpool comes out to get.
I love the Marvels.
yeah, exactly. So I would never, and again, I know it works for some people, but for me, I would never want to be boxed into just covering one genre, one IP. I always love, like you mentioned earlier, I love covering horror on my channel, superhero stuff, Star Wars, DC, Marvel. When I cover a lot of TV shows, and that's a whole YouTube thing within itself of covering TV shows, especially like on a week-to-week basis. So I always like to do like a variety, and it keeps me excited, because I can always have something new and exciting to talk about, instead of, again, just trying to find this one thing and try to find a new angle to talk about that one thing consistently. So
Right, absolutely. Yeah, man, that's the thing about your channel too, man. I mean, like you you're all in, bro. I mean, you're covering TV stuff too. And here's a good question then. And with these interviews, sometimes I feel selfish too, because these are things that I, want to talk about and find out, as well as I know that the audience might be thinking. But how do you schedule all that, man? I mean, I can only imagine how meticulous you might have to be, because like you said, you're covering shows and covering them. I mean, it must be a bear for your schedule, or is it?
It is because as you mentioned earlier about the hobby angle, like this to me is not full-time quite yet, but I'm trying to pivot more into that. So because I still have a job that I do outside of YouTube, a couple different jobs I do outside of YouTube. So it is a matter of scheduling that is a big component for me. And luckily, with me being a part of a film critic group and having different connections with different PR teams and different studios, I have the luxury of getting things in advance. So like I'm covering a series that's coming out on Amazon pretty soon. I was watching it over the last week or two, and that gives me the benefit for when the show does release. I already have my series review, whatever the case I might do, it and explain, already prepped as the show releases. And by that time that show releases, I'm already watching the next show that I want to cover in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month from now. So I do have, and that was talking about the progress of building a channel and building connections, having that whole idea of getting connections with PR and studios to have the opportunity to watch things early. That's a process, because I was that person that would watch something that Netflix drops a series, Stranger Things season 3, and if I didn't have to work in the next morning, I would wait till 2 o'clock in the morning, watch it all just to have that review up the following day. And sometimes that didn't work out, and you would have to review it a couple days later, and obviously kind of miss the wave of momentum with the algorithm and whatnot. So yeah, scheduling and having things a little bit in advance, seeing movies in advance, shows in advance, helps out tremendously with how I cover my shows and my movies.
Yeah, awesome, man. Now that's really a great bit of information and advice too, especially for me, because and some of that I've been able to kind of dip my toe into a little bit as far as starting to have some more connections and obviously different creators that I've started to get to know that are much further ahead in their journey and process than me. But you're right, that definitely can help, and scheduling is key, man. But definitely, I always say I have so much respect for content creators like yourself that have that wide net, because I know how much time goes into it. And especially if you have a regular job or another job or whatever, it's like, whew, my hat goes off. It really
but it's like I'm bringing it back. It's something I'm passionate about. If I didn't like the stuff I was doing, it would be hard to continue to do it, because the editing takes a while. Again, thumbnails, descriptions, keyword, all that. It's a whole thing. But I love what I do, man, and it's so much fun to talk about the things you love, and it's even more fun when you have people that want to talk to you about it. That's the beauty of YouTube, is just finding those your clan, your group that just loves to talk about the stuff that you get nerd out about. That's the fun beauty of it all.
Absolutely. One other thing that just jumped to my mind too, as we, like I said, we're going to wind down, but were there and are there now other creators that you look towards for inspiration, or maybe had some guidance or were mentors to you?
Well, there's definitely people that I watched kind of in my early stages and still watch to this day. Like back in the day, it was like a decade ago. The guys over at Schmoes, like Christian and Mark Ellis, like that whole Collider sphere of like ESPN for movie fans. Like I feel like some of them, I don't know if most of them are still, like, I know John Campea still does this thing. I don't really watch John too much, but I still watch like Christian Harloff. Who else too? On a similar bandwidth as things that I cover, like Sharonda Williams for Pay or Wait. I'm a big fan of her work. I've had an opportunity to meet her in person a couple times and bounce ideas off each other and collab a few times. Man, there's so many, and it's like I'm on the spot. I'm trying to think of like other people that Pay or Wait. One of my another YouTube friend of mine, Brandon from Just My Opinion Reviews. E-Man from E-Man Movie Reviews. I've watched the Sean Chandlers of the world. We talked about Cody earlier. Big fan of his work. There's so many, man. Like I said, I still watch to date. And as you mentioned, just knowing what goes into it and knowing like what they're doing and watching them kind of grow outside of the YouTube space and see them doing, red carpet events or interviewing talent, what have you. It's inspirational. It's great to see, man, because again, as we know, it's not easy. I will say, going back to our conversation, it's not easy. It's not for the easily discouraged out there. It's a tough gig, but when you find that momentum and find that rhythm, and then again, surrounding yourself with good, like-minded people, and you have the passion and the desire to make it work, and if you want to make it into that, more than a hobby, it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, well said, man. And that's a great place to park, man, because it definitely is possible. No doubt about that at all, man. Well, look, seriously, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. This has been so much fun. I really feel like, there was definitely some other questions I had and different other places we could go with it. And like I said before we started the recording, I hope that we can, do this again. I'd love to bring you onto a live panel with some of my friends and stuff like that, because I think we could have a really fun conversation. But for you guys who are watching this, definitely make sure you go to Movie Files, subscribe, support. Elliot's really awesome, as you can tell by this conversation, and I'm going to have the link to his channel in the description, and you will not be sorry that you do it. If you're a fan of movies, like whether it's horror, sci-fi, action, TV, he does it all, man. It's crazy. I don't know how you do it, but much respect to you, bro.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on. This was fun. And yes, sign me up, mark on your calendar, man. Whenever we can do this again, I would love to be there and have some more fun discussions with you.
All right, man. Well, look, for you guys watching, leave some comments. Let us know what you think. And as always, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace out. Catch you later.